cub's cry rose into the still morning air like a thin thread of fear. It was soft, almost too soft for the jungle to hear, yet it carried something that didn't belong in the calm of dawn. For a moment, even the birds seemed to pause. The forest held its breath, as if it already understood what the cub could not. Danger had finally stepped out of the shadows. But only a few minutes earlier, everything had been peaceful. The morning sun had been gentle, not harsh or bright, but warm enough to paint the forest floor in patches of gold. Dust floated between the beams like tiny stars drifting through the air. A young leopard mother walked quietly across the clearing, her spotted coat glowing like broken sunlight. Every step she took was silent and smooth, the way only a big cat can move. Behind her stumbled her tiny cub, still clumsy, still learning, still amazed by every leaf that moved. The cub tried to place its paws exactly where its mother had stepped, copying her like all young animals do. But its paws were too small, and its legs wobbled under its own weight. When a butterfly drifted past, the cub forgot everything and stumbled after it, batting the air with its soft little paws. The mother paused and turned her head, watching with patient eyes. There was no danger she could sense, no threat in the wind. So she let her cub play, even if only for a few seconds. The forest around them was waking up. A flock of small birds hopped between branches, shaking dew onto the ground. A light breeze pushed through the tall trees, making their leaves whisper. Everything felt quiet and innocent, as if the world had promised the leopard mother one safe morning. But promises don't last long in the wild. Not far from the clearing, something else had woken up too. A hyena, thin and desperate from a long night without food, slipped between the shadows. Its fur hung in patches. Its ribs showed through its sides. But its eyes, those eyes were sharp, cold, and hungry. The hyena moved with a slow patience, almost gliding across the ground. Not rushing, not panting, just waiting, watching. It saw the leopard mother first, her muscles strong, her steps calm and confident. Stayed low. A mother leopard was dangerous, far too dangerous to challenge. But then the hyena noticed the cub, small, alone, unaware of its own fragile life. And in that moment the hyena understood. The forest was offering it a chance. Still, it didn't attack. Not yet. Hyenas do not waste energy. They wait until the world opens the door wide enough for them to walk through. The leopard mother lifted her head again. A faint scent drifted through the air. Antelope. Maybe. Food. She needed to hunt soon. Her cub was growing, and motherhood demanded strength she could only keep by feeding well. Her ears twitched as she listened to the forest. Nothing warned her of danger. Nothing felt wrong. She padded toward a tree with wide branches stretching out like arms. With a single graceful leap, she caught the lowest branch and climbed upward. The cub watched with huge eyes, its tiny tail twitching in excitement. It wanted to follow. It wanted to be just like her. The cub backed up, shuffled forward, and sprang. But its small claws barely caught the rough bark before slipping. The cub slid down the trunk and fell back onto the leaves with a soft thump. It wasn't hurt, just startled. For a heartbeat, it sat still, blinking at the ground beneath its paws. Then it realized something terrible. It was alone. High above, the mother continued climbing, focused on the scents drifting across the treetops. She didn't hear the cub's tiny whimper. She didn't hear the forest shift. She didn't see the shadow creeping closer through the grass. The cub tried again to climb, scratching desperately at the bark, but its claws were too short. Its legs were too weak. Its chest filled with a tight, scared feeling. It let out a soft cry, a cry that was not loud, not sharp, not even urgent. Just sad, just confused. But that cry was enough. The hyena's ears flicked up instantly. It froze, muscles tightening. His head turned slowly toward the sound. That small, helpless voice cut through the quiet morning like a thread pulling the predator forward. The jungle changed in that moment. The warm sunlight felt colder. The gentle breeze felt heavier. Even the birds in the branches seemed to stop moving, as if they sensed the wrongness growing beneath them. The hyena took one careful step, then another, slipping quietly between the tall grass, drawing closer to the sound that promised an easy kill. The cub didn't know what danger was. It only knew that its mother was not beside it. It padded around the base of the tree, letting out another soft mew that trembled at the end. Its tiny tail curled close to its body. Panic started to rise in its chest. And then, for the first time that morning, the leopard mother heard it. She froze on the branch, ears snapping back sharply. That cry was not playful, not curious, carried fear, real fear. She spun her head downward, eyes scanning the ground. The moment she saw her cub alone, her heart tightened. But what she didn't see, not yet, was the danger that had already found the cub. The hyena had stopped moving, hidden behind a fallen log only a few meters away. It watched the cub, waiting for the perfect moment. A flick of its tail, a soft grunt under its breath. His paws pressed quietly into the dirt. The jungle seemed to bend around this single moment, holding it carefully, as if deciding what would happen next. Time slowed. Even the leaves hung still in the air. The cub took one step toward the tree trunk, lifting its tiny chin and letting out a final, helpless cry for its mother. And somewhere behind the log, the hyena's muscles coiled. The peace of the morning had cracked, and the crack was spreading. The jungle had begun to turn, and somewhere deep in the silence, the first shadow of danger stretched across the ground. The attack began with a sound so sudden, so violent, that it ripped the morning open. A snarl, sharp, wild, and hungry, tore through the clearing like lightning splitting a tree trunk. The cub didn't have time to turn. It didn't even have time to understand. One heartbeat it stood alone at the base of the tree, calling softly for its mother. The next heartbeat, the undergrowth behind it exploded. A blur of matted fur and snapping teeth burst out, kicking dirt into the air. Birds shot upward in a storm of beating wings, screaming warnings too late to matter. The hyena hit the ground running, its paws digging into the earth, its jaws already open. The cub squeaked in terror and tried to scramble backward, its tiny legs slipping, claws dragging across dry leaves. But the predator was faster, much faster. The hyena slammed its weight onto the small body, pinning it against the earth. Dust flew up in clouds, spinning in the sunlight like ash. The cub tried to twist away, but the hyena pressed harder, its breath hot and sour on the cub's face. Its lips curled back, revealing yellowed teeth made for crushing bone. The cub's heartbeat raced, loud and frantic, as if begging the forest for help. High above, the leopard mother heard everything. Her head snapped down, her eyes widened, and then she screamed. A deep, shaking sound that tore from her throat and echoed across the trees. In one motion, she lunged off the branch, claws slicing the air. She flew toward her cub with every muscle in her body. But she was too high, too far, too late. On the ground, the cub's world shrank into fear and pressure and darkness. Its small chest struggled beneath the hyena's strength. The predator shifted its weight, preparing for the finishing bite, the one no animal ever survives. It lowered its head. Its jaws opened wider. Its eyes burned with cruel hunger. And just when the forest seemed to decide that this would be the end, something ancient moved. A sound began low, rumbling through the earth, shaking the roots of trees and the bones of every creature nearby. It was not a growl, not a roar, something deeper, older, a command from the very heart of the savannah. The hyena froze, the cub froze, even the wind seemed to stop moving. Then the roar came again, this time tearing across the clearing like thunder ripping through mountains. It bounced off tree trunks, rolled through the valleys, and silenced every living thing within reach. The leopard mother landed hard but didn't complete her charge. Her paws skidded across the ground as she saw something move behind the hyena. Something massive, golden, and burning with fury. A lion. Not just any lion, the lion of this land. The king of this territory. His mane blazed in the sunlight, dark at the roots and glowing around the edges like fire caught in motion. His shoulders were broad and scarred from years of battles. His eyes were full of an authority no animal dared challenge. The hyena knew instantly what it had done. It had not only attacked a leopard cub, it had attacked a cub under a lion's sky. The lion didn't slow. He didn't question. He didn't hesitate. His paws hit the ground with thunderous force as he charged straight toward the hyena, roaring again, louder, sharper, filled with fury that shook the clearing. The hyena jerked its head up, its teeth still inches from the cub, and finally understood the truth. This kill did not belong to it. This kill belonged to death itself. And death had just arrived wearing a golden mane. The predator sprang backward, dragging dust and leaves with it. The cub rolled free, coughing, stunned, barely breathing. The hyena's ears flattened as the lion closed the distance with terrifying speed, his roar vibrating through the forest floor. For a split second, the hyena thought about fighting. It bared its teeth. It let out a high, nervous cackle. But then the lion stepped between it and the cub, blocking the small body with his own enormous frame, and the truth became impossible to deny. The hyena was nothing here. Nothing but an intruder. Nothing but a coward shaking in a king's shadow. The lion lowered his head, lips peeling back to reveal long, ivory fangs meant not for hunting, but for punishment. His chest heaved with every breath, muscles rippling beneath his mane. His eyes locked on the hyena with pure, controlled rage. And in that stare, the hyena felt the weight of the whole jungle pressing down on its spine. The leopard mother, still panting from her desperate leap, stood frozen. She couldn't rush forward, couldn't attack. The lion's presence was too powerful, too unpredictable. She paced in a tight circle, torn between fear and hope, her tail flicking with rising panic as she watched the scene unfold. The cub lay helpless on the ground, trembling, barely able to lift its head. It blinked slowly, eyes wide, trying to understand the lion's gigantic shape towering over it. The heat of the lion's body reached the cub warm, steady, protective. For a moment, the cub felt as if the sun itself had stepped down from the sky. The hyena took one shaky step backward, then another. The lion stepped forward. The hyena hesitated, its tail dropping low, curling between its legs, its ears flattened tight against its skull. The air between the two predators cracked with tension, as if the forest itself expected blood to spill. But the lion didn't strike. Not yet. He simply stood there, tall, furious, unmovable, as if daring the hyena to break his law again. The hyena understood. It dropped its head, not in respect, but in fear. Then, without another sound, it turned and bolted into the undergrowth, crashing through bushes in a clumsy, panicked retreat. Leaves flew behind it like sparks trailing from a fire. Silence settled slowly. The leopard mother exhaled shakily, her body trembling with a mixture of relief and fear. The lion remained where he stood, watching the direction the hyena had
vanished, making sure the threat was gone. Only then did he turn his head slightly, just enough to glance at the cub lying weakly beside him. His expression softened, just a little. The clearing, moments ago filled with dust and chaos, now felt strangely still. The sunlight returned, washing over the ground in quiet gold. The cub's tiny breaths grew steadier. The mother's eyes watched the lion with a mixture of awe and confusion. And for the first time, a new truth whispered through the trees. The hyena had chosen the wrong cub and discovered the unexpected reach of a king's mercy. The clearing was still shaking from the lion's roar when silence finally poured back into the trees. Dust drifted slowly through the sunlight like falling sand, settling over leaves and broken twigs. The hyena had vanished into the undergrowth, leaving only its fear behind. And in the center of the clearing, standing like a wall between life and death, was the lion. The cub lay beneath him, trembling so hard its tiny bones seemed to rattle. Its chest rose and fell in quick, shallow bursts, and each breath sounded like a soft plea. The lion lowered his massive head, the heavy mane brushing the cub's side. His warm breath washed over the small body, steady and deep, like a heartbeat the cub was trying to match. This was the moment where danger should have finished its work. This was the moment where the king of the jungle should have claimed what was now his. But he didn't. The lion shifted, muscles rolling under his golden coat. Instead of teeth, he brought his nose close to the cub, sniffing it slowly, carefully, as if trying to understand what had happened. His whiskers brushed the cub's cheek. Then, in a movement so gentle it barely seemed possible from such a powerful predator, he nudged the cub upright with the side of his face. The cub wobbled. Then it stood. Barely. The lion stepped back, but not far. He remained over the cub like a shield, mane catching the morning light, giving him the look of a living sunrise. The forest watched silently. A squirrel froze on a branch. The birds held their wings half open, unsure if they should flee or stay. Even the leaves seemed to stop moving, as though the jungle itself feared breaking the moment. Up in the trees, the leopard mother had finally reached the ground. Her paws hit the forest floor with a sharp thud. She was panting hard, her sides rising and falling with exhaustion and panic. Her eyes locked on her cub instantly, and then, slowly, they moved to the lion standing over it. Instinct told her to attack, run, bite, claw, save the baby, but instinct also told her something else. This was not a fight she could win. The mother crouched low, her tail whipping the air in tense, sharp motions. She growled, but the sound was thin compared to the echo of the lion's roar still clinging to the trees. She expected the lion to turn on her, or to claim her cub now that the hyena was gone. But he didn't even raise his tail. The lion lifted his head, looking at her with slow, steady eyes. There was no threat in his expression, only a deep, calm authority, like an ancient judge who had already made his decision. He stepped aside, not by much, just enough for the mother to pass. The leopard froze, confused. She blinked, unsure she had misunderstood. Lions do not give second chances. Lions do not step aside, but this one did. He turned his massive body just enough that sunlight broke through the gap he left, shining directly onto the cub. Her cub. The leopard mother moved forward in tiny, careful steps. Her paws barely touched the ground, as if she feared the lion might change his mind at any second. Her eyes never left his. Neither animal blinked. It was a silent agreement carved out of fear, respect, and something the jungle rarely sees: understanding. When she reached the cub, it let out the softest cry, weak, shaky, full of relief. It pressed its face in her chest, burying itself in the familiar scent of safety. She leaned down, licking its head in quick, frantic strokes, checking every inch of its body. The cub trembled against her, small paws clutching her fur, refusing to let go. The lion watched quietly, not with hunger, not with impatience, but with a strange, kind of solemn pride. He turned his head slightly, scanning the trees to make sure the hyena did not return. Only when the forest remained still did he finally let out a long breath, deep and low, like a final warning drifting across the clearing. Then he began to walk away. His paws sank gently into the grass. His mane swayed with each slow step. The sunlight followed him like a loyal companion. With every stride he took, the forest seemed to relax behind him. Birds began to chirp again. Leaves rustled lightly. A warm breeze passed through the clearing. The leopard mother kept her body low over the cub, watching him until he reached the edge of the tall grass. For a single moment, the lion paused. He didn't look back, but the air around him felt like a closing chapter, something the jungle would remember for a long time. Then he disappeared into the grass without a sound. The quiet that followed felt soft, almost sacred. The cub pressed even closer to its mother, breathing in her warmth. She rested her head gently over its back, pulling it close as if she could hide it inside her own heartbeat. Around them, the forest slowly returned to life. A butterfly drifted over the grass, its wings glowing in the sunlight. A pair of birds settled on a branch above, chirping softly to one another. Everything looked the same as before, but everything felt different, because the jungle had witnessed something rare. Predators protecting prey, enemies sharing a moment of peace, a king showing mercy instead of power. The leopard mother lifted her cub by the scruff, the tiny body dangling safely from her jaws. She moved toward the shadows of the forest, away from the clearing where fear had nearly taken her child. Her tail brushed gently across the cub's side, calming it with each step. As they disappeared into the cool shade, a soft golden light ran across the clearing behind them, settling into the broken leaves and scattered dust. The jungle breathed slowly, whispering its quiet truth through the branches. Sometimes strength destroys. Sometimes strength dominates. But sometimes, on mornings like this, the greatest strength is the one that chooses mercy instead. And deep in the tall grass, the lion walked on, alone but unchallenged, his footsteps steady as the heartbeat of the land he ruled. He never looked back. He didn't need to. The forest already knew his story.